Hey guys, welcome to another Mortgage Man podcast. I'm joined by Vanessa here from realestate.co.nz. How are you going today?
I'm awesome, thanks. I mean, the sun is out. What's not to love about that?
That is good. It's very warm. It's also nice. Today we're talking to Vanessa because I have some very important questions that we're going to cover. Things like how do you know how much to buy or how much to offer on a property? How do you find your first home?
Yeah.
I want to talk to you about your opinion on the new proposed capital gains tax to see how we think it's going to affect first home buyers, and then maybe just like the general market trends that you're seeing because you obviously got a lot of data available to you, and yeah, just all property related stuff from a first home buyer kind of perspective.
Nice. Yeah.
But first, do you remember your first home that you purchased?
I do. I remember
How
it
long
very,
ago was
very
it?
well. Goodness, that would have been about close to 15 years ago.
Okay.
And it was $222,500.
You remember the exact. Do you still live in it now?
We have it as a rental.
Okay. Yeah.
So we haven't sold it, and yes, they wanted 225,000 for it, but I negotiated the 2.5 grand off because I didn't have any kind of heating.
Okay.
So I wanted to get some heating in there, so that was my negotiating power.
Yeah.
Interest rates were a bit more eye-watering.
Yeah. What number do you remember?
Yeah,
You're like, I remember the exact weekly payment. And it was really expensive.
yeah, it was too expensive.
Yeah.
But look, I actually was a rent-vestor before I even knew what a rent-vestor was. So I was living in Auckland, but we couldn't afford to get a house in this market, and so purchased in the Hawke's Bay. Mm-hmm. I didn't even know rent vesting was a thing until about 6 months ago when I was telling the story and somebody else said, "Oh, you were a rent vestor."
There's a name for it now. Yeah. That's how I started as well, actually.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I had this, birthday kind of coming up. I had this sort of idea in my head about I really wanted to buy a house by a certain special birthday, and was every intention of it being my live-in home, but hey, that was not to be. So looked at other means for it as well. So yeah.
Okay, so did 222,000 seem like a lot of money back
Oh
then?
my gosh, it was eye-watering. I felt sick
Yeah.
when they accepted my offer. I did. And then when you look in the banking app or those days it was paper statements too.
Yeah.
It was just like, I'm never ever going to pay this off. I'm going to be in debt forever, and I'm never actually going to own I'm never going to be able to own my own home.
Yeah, okay. Well, what about now? If you still have that house, it's probably got more lending against it to help you buy other properties.
Yes.
Potentially.
Yep.
And that number's probably a lot bigger than what it was.
It is slightly bigger. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
3 or 4 times maybe.
So do you think that this is just like what we spoke about before? This is
Yeah.
just like the younger generation always think the number's big and scary, but then when you grow older, you realize inflation and all that other stuff affects it. It's not actually as big as it feels like it was.
Yeah, I do think that, you've only got your reality and what you live in today, right? So I think that, everything, I look at numbers today because I'd really love to buy another house, although my husband's like, no more, Vanessa, stop it. I'd really like to buy another house, and they look scary to me, and I am 15 years on from when we bought the first one. And they do look scary today. They don't look as scary as they did in 2021.
Yeah.
They're about 15-20% back on that, which is great. But again, if you're looking at the national average at $850,000, that's still a really big sum of money to, shell out. But yeah.
I think it is a big sum of money, but it really hits home when you see what that actually buys you.
Yeah.
Like my partner and I were looking at upgrading our house, and we put like the $2 to $3 million bracket in Auckland, and we're like, this doesn't go very far. And like in my head, $1 million house was like the pool, the lawn, like full
Tennis
section.
court.
Now the $1 million house in Auckland is just like some crappy old house on some land.
Yeah, maybe.
So it's just or like a townhouse.
townhouse, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm just like, it's more like when you see how far that money goes or doesn't go, then it kind of hits home of like, oh my God, this is actually really, really expensive kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think also, it's a bit like groceries, right? You look at a bag and go, how is that $100? There's not even any alcohol or meat in there, and that's $100 bag. But I think what you've always got to remember is that hindsight is a beautiful thing. I still wish I'd bought another 2 houses that day I bought that first house. I wouldn't have been able to, but I look back now and go, man, I wish I had bought 2 of them.
Worked harder to get more.
Yeah.
For sure.
And
Do you think that's still true today? Like, do you think people in 10 years' time will be like, oh man, $1 million house, we should have bought two?
I think they will.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
You look at how much incomes go up every year on average.
Yeah.
That, I mean, the DTIs is going, we can talk a little bit about debt to income ratios in a bit if you want, or legislative changes, but what you got to remember is that, you know, incomes will go up, capital gains will happen, taxed or not taxed, yet to be seen. But, you know, that's just the reality of where life and inflation happens. And, you know, in 10 years I'll be going, you know, there's a $200 bag and it's got no booze or meat in it. And, you know, it used to be $100. I should have bought more then, you know. So I just think that's the reality of how life moves on.
Okay, so based on where we are in the market, if you were a first-time buyer listening or watching this, would you say that now is a good time to buy? And I know I'll reframe this because everybody asks me this question. It's impossible to know the answer until you look backwards. And based on what you said, 15 years ago was probably the best time to buy, but probably 30 years before that was a good time to buy. So what, I guess maybe rephrasing the question, what's the pros and cons of buying today for a first home buyer, maybe compared to other times?
Great. This is, to me, my own personal opinion, a great time to buy property, first home buyer or not, because we have had average asking prices stable for just about 3 years now. So you'll be transacting in a market where you can be pretty confident about what it is that you're going to pay for it, especially if you've done your research and done it well. There is not a lot of heat in the market at the moment. And so the house that we live in at the moment, we purchased in 2016, at the end of 2016. And that whole year, it was horrible. I would turn up at an open home, there was 30 shoes outside the door, and you're already like, oh, you'd walk in, the agent would go, look, I just need to let you know there's an offer on this property. And you go, of course there is. And even in that year, although we had bought other houses, I was like, we're never going to get a house, you know? So that was quite confronting. We'd turn up at auctions, they'd just go well past our budget. And then September, whatever reason, the whole market came off the boil. The house that we were in, walked into the open home, we were only ones there. We went the following weekend, we were the only ones there. And we got it for what I deemed to be, at the time, a kind of reasonable rate, given that we were walking in, like we were looking for a good 6 months. I had to dress up the little one in like fairy outfits and stuff just to get her excited, because she'd walk in and go, I love it. Look at the television. Look at the couch. We should buy this one, you know, because she was littler. And, you know, and that was quite soul destroying at the time. And then as anything happens, the market does change. So why do I say this market's a good one? Prices are stable at the moment. You have, if you're a first home buyer and you've got a nest egg in the bank, you're probably coming off a really nice sugar rush of interest payments that have come into your nest egg,
like a term deposit kind of thing.
If you've got some money in the bank, or you know, you probably have seen the benefit of those over with the high interest rates. It's been working out for first home buyers recently. And there are some busy open homes, don't get me wrong, but you're in a far more considered market. You're able to ask more questions. Auctions are about 20-ish% of the market. They can get up to 30% in a higher market, depending on where you're at with your deposit. If you're needing that KiwiSaver to top it up, you probably can't buy at auction. So there's
just covering that number, 20%. You're saying that 20% of house purchases are happening via auctions, or houses being listed via auction?
Houses being listed via auction.
New Zealand wide.
New Zealand wide.
I thought it'd be like 90%.
No.
In Auckland, it must be close, like a higher number.
No, it's not. It's actually, it's about 23%. So it's slightly higher, yes, but not 90. So you have, and what we are seeing is that clearance rate is dropping. A good office is probably selling 60% under the hammer. Probably more of your average or low offices will be selling about 40 to 50% under the hammer. So that gives first home buyers that real opportunity. Whereas if you're going to say that 20% is coming to auction, perhaps only half of them are actually selling. That gives first home buyers a really good opportunity to suggest interest, share with the real estate agent that, hey, look, I can't buy under the hammer, but I'm really interested at a certain price point. And look, the market will be able to tell you what that number is in a very public forum for you to potentially negotiate post auction as well. So there is activity in the market, but it's certainly not a heated, frantic market, which personally I find quite challenging to buy in.
I think everybody does. And you're an experienced purchaser. A first home buyer is scared. They're like, oh my God, I've never done this before. how do I do it?
Yeah.
You go back to 2021, everybody was like falling over each other to get
Yeah.
houses. They were making offers on places they hadn't seen. They
Crazy.
weren't getting building reports. And that, like, I remember back then, I was about as busy as I am now.
Interesting.
But of all the people that I got pre-approvals, probably only 50% would buy.
Yeah.
Because they just didn't have, like, they couldn't buy because they were just getting outpriced, or even just first-time buyers that were more experienced or more, or I guess less risk averse than these guys were.
Yeah.
Now I'm probably up to like 90% of my pre-approvals end up buying.
Wow.
Because they have
Okay.
way more time to think about making offers, to learn the process, to actually go, here's 3 houses I could buy for prices that I want to get them for, and then I can choose one, as opposed to back then. So yeah, definitely more time, which is massive when you're a first home buyer.
Oh yeah.
House prices, like, obviously cheaper than what they were at the peak. And then interest rates, obviously.
Yeah.
Like, they're now becoming pretty much below the average, I would say, of what we've had in New Zealand. Around that 5% mark is like what we've had. Which, funnily enough, people say to me, I'm just waiting for interest rates to go down, just waiting for house prices to go down, then I'll buy. So now what's the reason why they're not buying?
Yeah.
And some people will never, because they just want to like the idea and never do it. But
I agree.
now you've got those things. We talked about data. We obviously see a lot of media headlines in New Zealand about real estate because we are a very property-driven country. Some will say house prices are going down. Some will say house prices are going up. They could almost say that same headline in the same week because of the data set that they're using.
Yes, agreed. Yep.
So how do we know which one to listen to?
I wouldn't be listening to the media if you're trying to make an informed decision. I think that's going to give you a vibe, for lack of a better word, which is, and you were dead right, which is probably a mixed vibe.
Yeah.
What I personally do is that typically if you have never even thought about buying before and like, where do I even start? There are so many opportunities across any of the portals. I mean, I'll talk to realestate.co.nz specifically because it's pretty easy. You can go into the main menu at the top, go to Market Insights, and in there you can type in your suburb that you're thinking about buying in, and it will give you asking prices, selling prices, average rents, average number of properties on the market, trend over a year, trend over 3 years, trend over 10 years. So there is so much information that you can look at there. And this, to me, is where it's relevant, is at a suburb level.
100%,
because what's happening in Takapuna, where we're filming today, is going to be very different than what's happening in Sandringham, which will be different again to what's happening out in Howick.
Or even like the West Coast versus Queenstown.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Two completely opposite.
Top of the table, bottom of the table.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is like, you look at New Zealand as a whole, does that matter? Not really. It's more about where you're looking at buying.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yep. If you're not a data person, right, because I think that it can be quite confronting when it's like, Vanessa, Aaron, you're telling me to look at data. I don't even know what does it even mean? How does it even start? If you're more of a people person, start going to some open homes. Open homes are free. You don't have to book a ticket. Go and talk to some real estate agents in your area and understand what's happening with the market. Now, what I mean by that is walk in and look at how many shoes are outside the door. Okay, this property is either quite popular or it's not popular. If you can get some FaceTime with the real estate agent, what type of range are we thinking that this property is going to sell for, right? Once you start to get 10 or 15 of those under your belt, you'll start to see a bit of a trend, right? Mm-hmm. You'll also, if it's a good agent in your area, you'll probably start to see them at quite a few open homes. They'll get to know you. You'll get to know them. You can kind of share with them, hey, look, I'm looking for my first home. We're aiming for 3 BD, but happy to settle for 2. Definitely want land versus a townhouse, but hey, we're open to and you'll start to gather information. The really good real estate agents actually do a really great job and really want to help buyers and sellers. They know that they understand the importance of looking after both sides of the story. And to be fair, they have most of the listings. So if you're walking into open home after open home after open home in a particular suburb, you're probably going to start to see the same real estate agent. So when I say look at the data, it doesn't mean download all the stuff, look at a spreadsheet. You can collect your own data and information in an area that you're looking at. If you've got 5 suburbs, but you know it's going to be 2 BD because you really want to live in these 5 suburbs, but as a first home buyer, you're going, you know what, I've only got so much to spend, so it's going to have to be a 2 BD to start with. And you go to every single 2-bedroom home in those 5 5 suburbs, open home for the next 2 to 3 months, you are going to have an amazing data set in your mind to understand what's happening in those suburbs, in this market, in that two-beddy space.
Exactly. That's usually what I say to people as well. I'm just like, we think we can get you pre-approval. We're going to submit it today. Go start looking at open homes.
Yeah.
Because they're going to know, like I could tell them how to figure out or exactly do what you just said. But we're not doing that for you.
No.
You walk through the houses, you'll understand as well. Once you've walked through something, how much it sells for, and then you can compare it to another house that's either better or worse, and then you can actually then formulate how much you would make an offer for.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's really, really good in terms of real life experience, because again, uploading documents and talking to a broker is kind of easy.
Yep, I agree.
All you got to do is oh, cool, I'll just upload stuff into your portal and you do the rest and get a pre-approval. It gets real when you actually start looking at houses and then trying to make an offer. That's the scariest part.
Yep.
And they're like, oh my God, how much do I write down here?
Yes.
And I can give you all the guides and all the videos, but ultimately you're the one deciding how much you have to put down there. Just going back to all this data that we're talking about whether or not now is a good time to buy. Does it really matter? If you think about the first home buyer, does it actually matter?
That is another piece of advice I give people, is understand the market, but do not buy for it. Because as we were talking earlier, the best time to buy a house was 10 years ago, or probably 30 years ago. Or do you know, if you were my mum 50 years ago, she bought it for 25 grand in Wainuiomata in Wellington. And it was eye-watering. I mean, I remember sitting down with her when I was a teenager, and she was so worried. She said, Vanessa, you're never going to own a home. It is so expensive to buy homes now. And I think she just spent 200 grand on a quarter acre. Oh, no, sorry, 2.5 acres. We had a couple of paddocks where I learned to drive. And she was so worried that I was never going to buy a home because they were so expensive. And home ownership rates are the same today as they were back then, in terms of how many people own properties here in New Zealand. So if you wait for the perfect market, you'll never get it. It's what do you need to do to get the confidence to pull the trigger? Because there is an opportunity for every person in every market. Sure, you've got to find it. Sure, you've got to go and save some searches. You've got to go save some properties. You've got to understand how an auction works. You've got to talk to a mortgage broker. You've got to find out what you're comfortable with. What's your risk profile for you? If you're buying with someone else, what's their risk profile? You've got to do all that work. But if you buy for the market, you'll never buy. So I think it's super important to understand it and know it. But if you're going to wait, that's where I think you could get yourself hamstrung.
Yeah, and I think also to put it in perspective, if you're going to live in this house for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, do you really care if you are paying $5,000 extra, $10,000 extra than what you think the market is worth? I'm just waving at some people that I know outside. So yeah, I guess that's the thing, is you can go so deep on the data, be over analytical, and you just don't do it. Whereas some people who, I guess ignorance is bliss sometimes. Yeah. And you're like, oh yeah, I'll just buy this house and figure it out later. And most of the time that's almost the better thing to do, as long as they do the due diligence properly.
Of course. And please, 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 please never buy a house without doing a building report.
Yeah.
For the sake of how much they are, a couple of $100, they could save you hundreds of thousands of dollars later. Please. I mean, if you're going to be ignorance is bliss, amazing, go nuts, but please don't do it without buying a building inspection and getting a builder around.
Which was in the previous podcast that I did. So anybody watching or listening should go and watch it, because it was very eye-opening, even for me.
Yeah, awesome.
So you spoke about the relationship with your mother and her view on you not being able to buy a house.
Yeah.
You obviously have a 20-year-old son. What's his view on buying a house? Is that in his radar at the moment? Does he think he's going to rent forever? Or is he just like, I'm going to go travel and I don't really care right now?
Yeah, it's not really on his radar at the moment. He is so he's recently studied drain laying, gas fitting and plumbing. He's, as he said, I want to go and do a job that AI is not going to take, which all power to him. And he is more around thinking about what does that career, job, apprenticeship world look like for him at the moment. I think we've talked about properties and mortgages around the dinner table for a very long time, and that's because my job, our passion, my husband and I are in a privileged position to have a portfolio of homes that we have built up over time, and that are assets in our family, and we've talked about what that means, and we're very open with the kids around sharing what the mortgages are and how that's working, and then we talk about OCRs and all the rest of it. So, but that's just because of our passion, and so I think there's probably not a lot of specific questions or comments from him on I'm never going to do this or I'm going to do this. He's pretty cruisy kind of kid anyway, but there's certainly that peripheral of him understanding the market. And I don't think you even need to have properties to be able to have that conversation with your children or sisters or brothers or aunties or anyone. I think part of that data and that due diligence and that conversation is just talk to people who've bought a house and understand their experience if you didn't have it around the dinner table. And if you have got little ones and you don't own and want to own, take them on the journey with you. That's going to help them start thinking about it if that's something that's on their radar for later. Or even share that, I'm still a renter. I wish I had bought 15 years ago. I haven't had the opportunity to, but let's educate ourselves together, So I don't think it necessarily has to be that you've got experience in it. You could do it as a piece to learn together. I think we are so passionate about property here in New Zealand. We have such a love affair with it. I believe it's about 65% of New Zealanders own a home, which is a phenomenal number.
That's quite high, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
30% rent. And, I think that there's probably a good learning piece in and around that for anyone, whether you're learning, it's your children learning, or you're just learning from others.
So what about these people that say they are going to rent forever and they don't want to buy a house? Like, I feel like I get a lot of comments on my social media, like housing is too expensive, or the market's going to collapse, or people aren't going to need houses in the future, which seems wild. But like they're going to obviously, so there's obviously other people on social media that say, go invest your money elsewhere.
Yeah.
So rent because it's cheaper today.
Yeah.
Go invest your money elsewhere in shares or whatever, and then you will have your retirement fund from investing in shares.
Yeah.
Because I have a relatively strong view on this,
Yeah.
but people always think I'm biased because I'm a mortgage broker.
Yeah, of course.
And probably the same with you, you're in real estate.
Yeah.
So, but what is what would you say to those people? Like, do you think they've got a good point of view, or if you're being more critical of them, what would you say?
I think, look, if you believe you're right or you believe you're wrong, you're right. So, if you honestly believe that the market is going to crash and property's awful, and then you go and invest in it, you're probably going to find a terrible one that's going to confirm your views, and you are going to then really, have a disdain towards that investment. Because if you believe that shares are the be-all and end-all of the world, then you probably are going to see the success, and you're going to do your research and you're going to have a passion towards it. I'm not a financial advisor, but I would say diversifying your portfolio is always a really good option, because you look at COVID, you look at the tariffs, what happened to the share market there. You look what's happened in the last 5 years with property. If you bought in 2021, you're probably sitting on a negative equity of around 15 to 20%. So again, we're talking about one specific scenario with one specific thing. I think that what I would say to people is open up your mind, and you'll be amazing what you'll learn. So if housing was such a terrible investment, why is 66% of New Zealanders doing it? Not sure. Maybe just question yourself on that. If, shares are the be-all and end-all, go and talk to someone who perhaps was in the 86 crash and lost all their life savings. There's always going to be a story that's going to confirm or deny your perspective. What I would encourage people to do is just be a bit more open about ways in which they can solve whatever challenges that they're trying to solve as well. What's your end goal too? If it's just you don't really want to have a partner in life, you don't really want to have children, then maybe you just go, I'm going to chuck it all in shares, and what does it really matter anyway? And that's okay too. I think it also depends on your lifestyle and what you hope to achieve with your life.
Yeah, because when I was younger, I was like, why would anyone ever want to own a house? And my parents have investment properties, and I was like, I get why they have them, but why would anyone? They're more expensive than renting. And I would have been 24, I think, so 11 years ago. I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Ah, interesting.
And then I understood why people bought properties, and then bought 2 properties within 1 year, like my first home and another investment property. And I still own one of those properties. But what clicked in my head is that, yes, today rent is cheaper, and it's probably the same today, is that, if you compare $1 million house to rent it, it's going to be cheaper than to own it.
Yep.
But the problem is it's not always going to stay like that. Rent historically always goes up.
Yes.
House prices historically always go up.
Yep.
But the cost of that mortgage, if you locked it in, assuming rates stay within that band of 8 to 3%, they're going to go up and down, but they're not going to match the cost of like rent going up.
Yeah.
So you can look at today and be like, okay, snapshot, $500 a week versus $800 a week. I get an extra $300 I can invest. Great. But the mortgage cost is going to stay around $800. The rent's going to go $550, $600, $650, and then before you know it, you'll be like, oh, I should have bought that house 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And then I get the capital growth, the freedom, and all that other stuff as well. But like I said, we're biased because we're in property, right?
Yeah. No, I do think so, and I agree with you as well. It's around going, what is the money that I'm investing in rent? What is that doing? Well, that's actually paying off somebody else's mortgage, probably. I think what is promising for the New Zealand property market is that we are getting more of these simplicity lifestyle builds and the Kiwi property builds, which they have a bit more of a structured approach on, they're called build to rents effectively. So they're built for people to come in and rent them, and you can kind of basically have them as long as you look after them for as long as you like. You're not succumb to the market influences like perhaps mum and dad investors are, or the likes of ourselves, when if rates go up and water goes up and our mortgages go up, we probably have to we have to talk about rents. Whereas in some of those bigger complexes where you've got a lot more funds all pulled in together, they're less affected by the shocks of the economy. So I think there'll be more option, and you'll have a rental annual increase of 3.5 or 4%. You know it's going to be that every year, and you can do the maths based on knowing that that's what the increase is going to be, because that's what you've kind of signed the contract in. But yeah, I think again, you just got to, if you take a step back and go, what other ways can I look at my bias towards how much I think property is a scam or a Ponzi scheme I've heard, or the market's going to crash, or all, I don't know where people are going to live if they're not going to live in houses, but hey, I'm always, open to be proven wrong. So I suppose just if you are one of those social media commenters, just take a step back from that comment and go, what's driving me to be so anti this, and is that story that I'm telling myself actually true?
Yeah, it's a good point of view. Speaking of lots of social media comments, a big change last week was announced, potential capital gains tax.
Yeah.
Without bringing in the party that proposed this, because any party in the future could have a capital gains tax in New Zealand, but this is obviously very topical. If we had a capital gains tax in New Zealand, do you think it helps first home buyers? Or what effect do you think it would actually have?
The first home buyer market, or the kind of the stock that perhaps first home buyers might purchase, is typically the same sort of stock that investors would buy. I think that a capital gains tax is going to probably suppress the investor market more so, and probably get that end of the market to think about diversification and where they're investing their money. If it's taxed on similarly to the likes of shares or bonds, or wherever they've got their money, I think it potentially could help first home buyers, because what we've seen, so the previous government popped in quite a lot of legislation for investors around the bright line test, the LVRs up to 40%, and also the interest deductibility. Mm-hmm. So that
my favorite tax law that makes no sense.
So that did stifle the investor market, which saw a first home buyer market increase quite considerably. I think it was around 15-ish%, and it's jumped to even, it was as high as I believe 25% of the market was first home buyers, because they weren't competing in the same market with the potential of the likes of an investor. So I think that the capital gains tax from a first home buyer perspective could be beneficial for them if you're going to reduce the other half of demand that's happening in that market. I think that, we talked about, was it GST came in the 80s at like 5% or something, said, this is it, we won't put it up ever, it's just once,
Yeah.
So, once it comes in, I don't think it'll go away. I do think it'll probably be here to stay. There'll just be different varying ratios of it.
Does it make you think that you're not going to invest in property? Would you sell your properties, or would you just hold them for long? Because this is how I think it's going to work.
Yeah.
some people, let's just say it comes in 2027, some people will just sell their properties before 2027 to avoid paying tax. Others will hold on to their properties and are probably less likely to sell them until they've made more money on them because they know they have to pay tax. So I think there'll be an increase in supply before 2027. Maybe less people will see investment properties as a profitable thing.
Yeah.
But the hardcore investors, they're probably just going to hold on to their properties for longer. And because at the moment there's no inheritance tax, like they'll probably just hold on to them forever.
Yeah, and then
so I guess back to my question, does it make you think differently about property investment or not really?
Probably not. I mean, again, we try and diversify our portfolio as well, so we don't just have properties in terms of building wealth. I mean, I think also something else that we haven't touched on, but I think is a hugely beneficial piece that came out in 2007 is the KiwiSaver scheme. Not only to help people to get into their first home and continue, our trend of that in New Zealand, how much of our love for property, but also it just means that, if that tax comes in, I know it's not in the family home at the moment, but if the tax comes in, if we have a reduction in the ability for capital gains to happen because of debt to income ratios or because of more legislative changes that are potentially going to happen here in New Zealand, it's kind of almost topped up with the fact that we've got KiwiSaver now as well. So it probably, again, I'd need to work it through. I'm not really someone who buys properties and then goes, right, I'm going to ride the market for 5 years, then get rid of it. So I'm not sort of one of those investors. I'm more of a holder on
Which in my view is a true investor, not a speculator.
Yeah.
Like you talk about people flipping properties, like they're already taxed.
Yeah.
So it doesn't stop that. And it's kind of an interesting point that you just brought up is like if we're putting in all these policies to help slow house price growth, a capital gains tax, which makes money from capital gains, is kind of like cancelling each other out.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of like a bit weird. And yeah, I think it's other countries obviously have it. My view, which is slightly controversial, is it's either got to be all or nothing. So either do it on the home and on businesses when they're sold, as well as everything else.
Yeah.
Don't have it selectively on things because I think tax law should be relatively the same across the board, because then it becomes a bit more of an admin headache as well. But
we like to pick and choose though, don't we?
that's how politicians get votes, right? So I just want to go back to realestate.co.nz because I use that more than, let's say, your competitors.
Thank you.
Because it has way more control on the search engine. So if somebody said, how do I find my first home? I think being able to have and select multiple suburbs at the same time is great.
Yep.
I think different title types, I think different land sizes. Like obviously there's the obvious stuff like bedrooms and bathrooms, but like land size and then like building size is so helpful.
Yeah, cool.
Because like if you're looking for something that's got a backyard, you know that it's probably going to be over 500 square meters.
Yeah.
And it just narrows things down. And if you're looking at multiple suburbs, Point Chev, Takapuna, and Mangawhai, can kind of just group it together.
Yeah.
Is there any other tips or tricks that people are realizing that, this is a good platform to use to help me find my first home?
So you can search by fixed price only.
Okay.
So if you want to, again, I go back to that's helpful in the data space as well. If you're like, right, I want to have a look at all the every property in Takapuna that's 3-bedroom and only fixed prices, so I can kind of see what the vibe is around that. I find that a lot of first home buyers like to use that. If you are looking for say a certain side of a suburb, so if Mount Albert, you know that you're just not going to get top of the hill, but you're kind of sick of getting the houses in your save search with that in, on our app you can literally draw around
That's
where
cool.
you'd quite like to purchase. Again, you might be like, well, if I'm looking for an investment property at a beachfront and you just want that half of the beach, that type of thing. So those are really helpful. What I also would say is that part of this data sort of investigation that you're doing, go into save your search, whether it's the searches, 3 bedrooms, fixed price, whatever it is. And then when a property comes onto the market that's of interest to you, save it, because any changes to that property will notify you. So you don't have to keep going back in and going, okay, the auction's on Wednesday, 2 weeks from now, I need to put in my calendar, the auction's on and then remember to go back and look and see if it got passed in. If it sells, we'll let you know. And if it gets change of sale method, so it goes from auction to fixed price of 800,000, we'll just flick you an email or a push notification on your app if you've got them turned on. And I think, again, that's where, even if you're starting to think about buying a home in 6 months at the end of next year, can I recommend just starting some of this stuff now? Because while, yes, it might be a different market then, but it's going to start to get you thinking about the market, about what it looks like, about questions that you might want to ask when you are going into those open homes. I think when I talk to first-time buyers, something that they do say to me is, oh yeah, but I don't know anything. I don't want to walk into an open home. What if the agent asks me something and I don't know what the answer is? It's not a test. And once you've started to, even before you need to start down the open home route, or before you've even talked to a mortgage broker, go and save some properties and save some searches, see what's coming up. You'll have your own questions in your mind, so that when you do take that next step of phoning Aaron and going, look, I want to talk about pre-approvals, and Aaron goes, hey, get into those open homes, you've already got some questions that have been percolating in your mind for the last 4, 5, 6 months. You might walk in and go, oh yeah, that property up the road sold for 860,000. Do you think that was a good buy? And the real estate agent's going to be going, shivers, how did they know that property up the road sold for 860,000? So you can kind of become your own mini market expert just by some of the really simple tools that you can use on platforms.
Yeah, I get an email every day from you guys saying, it's a match. It's a match.
Yeah.
I'm like, I thought I deleted my dating apps, but all good. So speaking of real estate agents, like obviously there are really good ones,
yep,
and there's probably some really bad ones that give the good ones a bad reputation. And one thing that I'm noticing on some of the search engines is that real estate agents put properties, and this is a frustration that I hear from first-time buyers as well, they put properties in these lower brackets, and I feel like they do it on purpose, because you can see the CV as this, you can look up the property and it's like, that's definitely not going to sell for 900K. Why is it in the 900K bracket? So do you think that is just the industry doing that? Do you think it's a real estate agent being cheeky, or is this what they're being told to do by whoever's teaching them what they're doing?
Yeah, that is a great question. And I know that's a big frustration for everybody, especially first-home buyers. I would say that majority of the really good real estate agents and the ones that have got majority of their listings, typically they will make a more realistic search price than not, because they want to get the right buyer in the room rather than lots of buyers who can't afford it. So I do think that you'll start to see that perhaps it's a certain subset of our market, not everybody. On realestate.co.nz, I can say that if you have, now this is a little bit on the other side, but we won't show you a property unless it is matched with what the real estate agent has shared with us. I do understand that some of the other portals will drop it by up to 20% either side. So that might also not even be a real estate agent thing. It can also be a portal thing. We are more, so you might, if you do the same search on us and perhaps our nearest competitor, you might get more properties in our nearest competitor, because they, I believe, they expand that search out a little bit wider. But yeah, I think it's, again, that's not something you can control. So control the controllables, and you're dead right. Once you start to look at the CVs, look at the estimates, look at what properties are selling for, understanding the market, saving, seeing them come back on the market from auction to fixed price, and then you see the price that they're for, then that search, I suppose, becomes almost not irrelevant, but you're already the expert, you know whether that's going to happen or not. And then you're making the decision to go, well, I'm going to auction because I want to see what's the haps and what's going for, what is happening with that particular property, but knowing it's probably out of my league anyway. In saying that, though, this is not a first home buyer story, but a girlfriend went to an open home, always loved the house, was on her street, always wanted to live in it, went up for sale, and the agent said to her, look, it's probably about 2.2. So she went, no, okay, not going to happen. She loved the house so much she went to the auction anyway. She put her hand up at 1.6 and bought it. And she had to call her husband.
She's like, I don't have pre-approval yet.
Had to call her husband and her mortgage broker real quick.
Yeah.
And then had to get her house on the market very quickly. Because again, and when we do this, have you accidentally bought a home? And yeah, the stories, the stories are phenomenal about people who accidentally buy homes, but that opportunity just comes up too quickly pass it by. But yeah, so the numbers are a challenge because, she would have said that's a $2.2 million house. I'm just going to go to the auction to see what happens. And she ended up buying it at 1.6.
Which is a very good point on understanding why the person's selling the house in the first place.
Exactly.
Because if it's a deceased estate or like a divorce, it's probably going to sell to whoever just puts their hand up.
Yep.
Versus somebody that bought it 2021 and wants to try and get their money back.
Yeah.
And that data on previous sale history is available.
Yes,
On most of those websites. The other piece of data that's on your website and like obviously on other places is like the estimated value. Mm-hmm. How is that put together?
So we have the privilege because we work with the Real Estate Institute of New Zealand, who has unconditional sales data. So what that means is if the property sells today and it goes unconditional tomorrow, we are going to get the information to say that property sold in the November market for this particular number. But let's just say it settles in February because they've got a bit of a longer settlement, 3-month settlement. The rest of the portals will get the number in February. So it's give or take 3 months-ish old. So so the reason that I tell you that is because the estimate on our site, and actually we get loads of emails every day into our portal saying, "Oh, I love your estimates. They're about the most accurate that we can get." And the reason for that is because we are the only portal that has the privilege of using unconditional sales data. So we use that. There's a whole algorithm in behind it around demand and what the CVs are, what the values are, what is sold in that market, what's listed in that market, the price ranges, like demand, there's a whole bunch of different data points that we pull together to try and get that number as accurate as possible. So so again, it's one data point in a myriad of everything that you need to know. I agree with you that understanding what it last sold for, and also ask the real estate agent, why is this person selling the house? That's a really, because you are dead right. Some people just want to get out of homes. So actually the top price isn't going to be the winner. It actually might be the lower price with less conditions, or the lower price but a shorter settlement. So, there's a lot of, and I'm sure there'd be plenty of content around there about all the different levers that you have to use as a buyer.
Yeah, because if you think in this market, a lot of people are buying on the condition of selling their own house.
Yes.
And if they've owned their own house for 20 years, they probably just know, okay, we just have to sell it for this amount to be able to buy a way better house.
Yeah.
So they're like, oh, we'll take $1 million even though it's probably 1.5.
Yep.
As long as it meets that minimum requirement, that's for them, it enables me to buy the house that I want. Yeah. So there's a lot of that going on at the moment as well. I want to quickly touch on, I think this is probably the last question, maybe, we'll see. Because another frustration I hear a lot of is homes.co.nz.
Yes.
The real estate agents can change the value.
Yes.
And you can see the graph of this is the trend for the suburb, this is the trend for this property, and then all of a sudden it's been listed and it's up here and across. I know you guys don't do that.
Yeah, we don't.
But how is that happening? Is that just the real estate agent saying we appraised it, it's in better condition than what the data shows us, and therefore we think it's at this? Or are they doing it to kind of manage expectations? Or do you not even know, because you're obviously not from homes.co.nz?
Yeah, no, I don't know why. I do know that they can change it. I don't know under what criteria, unfortunately. But I mean, you're dead right. It's one of those things where you've just got to look at the trend line, and that will give you a pretty clear indication as to whether this has been changed or not. So again, I'm not sure what the criteria is to change it, but again, another data point in your toolbox to go, okay, well, that's what's happened. And then again, there's another 3 or 4 portals that you can go and look at the estimates of and give yourself a bit of a range as well. So you go, okay, well, that's potentially what the real estate agent has changed it to, or the valuer, or whatever's kind of happened there. Let's go and look on real estate. Let's go and look on One Roof, and you might get yourself a bit of a view around what's happened, again, what's happening with the CV, and also walk into the open home and ask the agent what he thinks he or she thinks.
Why did you change it to $2 million and it was $1 million yesterday?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that brings in a really good point, is like the data stuff is data.
Yeah.
It's a computer. Mm-hmm. And it's the same with CVs, right?
Yes.
Like a really good example was the Blocks house that sold in Rangatira Road. Yes. I think the CV was like 1.6. And everyone's like, and I was like, it's going to sell for over 3 mil. And people were like, no, the CV is 1.6. And I was like, the CV is a bad indicator of the actual value. Yeah. Because if, for example, you renovated the house and spent $1 million on it, then obviously it's going to be worth a lot more. So that could be in the homes.co.nz example why a real estate agent put it up, because they've like, yeah, if an original condition in this neighborhood, it would be that. But they've decided to add an extension, and this is mean it's worth $1 million more.
Exactly. Yeah.
So real world, like you say, open home, seeing what it's like is always going to be the best thing, because a CV is like the average for a house in that condition. But if it's in better condition, it'll probably be higher. Worse condition, probably be lower.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And again, your eyes don't lie, so you've got to walk in and go, oh, I can see why this has changed.
Yeah, 100%. Is there anything else that you think would be helpful for first home buyers to know before we wrap this up?
I think the only person standing in your way is you. You know,
Or your partner.
or your partner. Yeah, actually, true. Probably more so your partner. I just say work out, like there's data and there's information, but understand more about you, understand more about your risk behavior, surround yourself with people who are going to help you, who are going to support you, who are going to encourage you if you really want to do it. It is such a scary thing, buying a house. It doesn't matter how many times you've done it or how big the number or small the number is. It is a really scary thing. Get your group of experts in and around you. Make sure you trust them. If you are a particularly nervous person, not super confident in it, but really, really, really want to do it, get some confident people in and around you who can help you. Write it down every day. I am going to buy a house. I am going to buy a house. So I would, there's all sorts of portals and information and data and, up the wazoo these days. Like, it's phenomenal. I wish I had all of what we've got today when I was buying, but that's not going to make you buy the home. As you said, you're the one who needs to wrap the support around yourself to go, I'm going to write that number on that piece of paper, I'm going to sign the dotted line, and I'm going to look at my bank and go, oh my goodness, after I've purchased it. But there is nothing more amazing than that first day you walk in, you put the key in the door. It's giving me goosebumps thinking about it. And it's yours.
Yeah.
Like, no one can take it away from you. And it is such a special feeling. And I think this is probably why I love my job and love what I do, because, man, I can still remember that feeling myself, and I just would love everybody to share that similar feeling. It's nerve-wracking, scary, and challenging, but man, it is so rewarding.
Yeah, what I'm hearing is just make sure you understand the process, and it's like anything that you don't know is scary. So for what I see, education is massive, and that's why I built. There's a first home buyer academy that I give free access to. It's just like 100 videos of people just like, here's how you buy a house.
Yeah.
And like I said at the beginning, I'm not going to be the one that signs the dotted line for you, but here's a head start so that you feel more confident in the process.
Yeah, it's awesome.
So I think that's a really, really big step. So Vanessa, thank you for taking time to come and talk to me today. Thanks.
It's been awesome. I've really enjoyed it. Thanks,
Cool.
Aaron. Thanks, Tate. Thanks, everyone, for listening.